Welcome back to Hytale Lore. First and foremost, I have to say, this entire world is available for you to explore. Link down in the description if you would like to. It should be as simple as downloading it either through your client if that's connected, or through the website and dropping it into your mods folder. If you do play around with it, feel free to tag me on Twitter, @BreadleyIsHere. I would love to see what you get up to. And just because the mod jam submissions might be done does not mean that the work has ended. But let's jump into some lore, shall we? So recently we were talking about the Hytale Lore Q&A. And in that Q&A, there were a couple interesting things, particularly regarding the concepts that were initially touted for the game. So I'm going to throw a few pictures up here as I'm talking. Last thing I'm going to throw up here, if you would like to either skip ahead to see it or stick around to see it, is the trailer for the mod, which will be at the end of the video. But they did some interesting things in terms of both confirming and unconfirming certain concepts in the game. Let's bring up Tessa and Chyros. So Tessa and Chyros are two human NPCs. My long-standing theory, if you've been following these lore videos, has been that Tessa and Chyros were both members of the what is now called the Order of Broken Knights. This is something that's referenced in the soundtrack of the game and also through some iconography in the game, like the old knight statue and these old marble buildings that are abandoned, particularly in Zone 1. My theory is that those belong to an ancient human civilization. So people that would have lived alongside, for example, Crucible and the Outlanders before they were Outlanders, and have long since disappeared and fallen into ruin. The interesting thing here is that we're going to be meeting Tessa and Chyros. It seems like they're very much still an integral part of the game that is coming. So then the question becomes, are they going to be in the real Orbis? The Orbis that's coming when World Gen V2 officially releases and launches in the game with a brand new world to explore? Or are they in a different place entirely? We've seen that there are these pieces of Orbis, these fragments like the Forgotten Temple, that are kind of just drifting out in the world on their own, and I wonder if Tessa and Chyros haven't been given a similar treatment. The other very interesting thing here is that Tessa and Chyros are very clearly depicted having iconography from Gaia and Feran, respectively. And yet, there was a comment made by Joe in this lore Q&A where it seems like they may, in fact, not be enemies. Or maybe they weren't always enemies, it's a little unclear. And I would have to explore exactly how they do that in the game before coming to a final conclusion. But regardless, it looks like that concept art is going to remain the same and is something that we will be experiencing in the game. Now, that's a piece of the puzzle that seems to be remaining the same. Let's examine a piece that looks like it's changing significantly. And that, of course, is the Ferans. I would actually love to pause here and bring a Feran in. Now, Ferans are these anthropomorphic fennec fox-like people that inhabit Zone 2 of Orbis. Now, the previous lore for the Ferans, as shown here in the concept art, is the idea that they were enslaved by the Scarix, these bug-like people. Now, you can see on the arm, let's actually go into first person here, these are what are called freedom bracers. They have the element of wind symbol on them, and you can see them on all four limbs of this creature. The freedom bracers originally were meant to signify the fact that the Ferans were originally enslaved by the Scarix, and that the Scarix basically had the Ferans build them their big cities. At least that seemed to be the implication. However, it does look like that has changed. And maybe that change had already begun to take place before this was announced, maybe before the game even came out, because when the game came out, it came with this. This is Statue of the Founding Builder. It reads, "Long since forgotten by the fallen Scarix, some few statues of the Founding Builder still stand in their oldest ruins. The few explorers who have stumbled upon them speak only of an emanating sense of disappointment and disapproval, as if the stone itself was stained by the silent witness of the atrocities committed under the first and last Scarix Empress." So let's break this down a little bit. This is basically the concept that Initially, the Scarix had some sort of Scaric Empress. It seems like they had a very different previous civilization that was a lot more grand, a lot more put together, and based on some tidbits that we got in that lore Q&A, it looked like they were more intelligent in the past as well. Now that intelligence has gone, but the question remains, what are the atrocities that were committed? It wasn't the enslavement of the Ferans. So what exactly did they do? Was it the killing of those creatures, those giant skeletons that you can see littered around the landscape of Zone 2? Or something else entirely? But what is interesting here is that the way that I had interpreted the initial lore before the game came out was the Ferans were forced to build the Scarix structures for them. Now it seems like this founding builder was responsible for that instead. So that is a significant shift that has happened there, where it used to be the Ferans responsible for this element of it. Now it's the founding builder, a member of the Scarix, who seems to have this supernaturally lingering presence of disapproval. So this is the biggest question that remains to me. The Ferans did not build those structures for the Scarix. The Scarix did not force the Ferans to do so. Why do the Ferans have these wind bracers still? Is that also just outdated pieces of their character art? Or is it maybe going to become something else where it's no longer freedom from a group of people, it's just the idea of freedom because that aligns with the element of wind? They have these members of their society called a windwalker, which is what we spawn down there in the Klops homes, and they literally wield little tornadoes. Wind is the element of freedom, so maybe their freedom braces are literally just celebrating that, but I would still love to have a little bit more depth with the Ferans there. Because the current dynamic, regardless of that change in lore, does still seem to suggest that the Scarix are now unintelligent and unconnected to the world, and that the Ferans are connected to the world, and also the way the Ferans interact with the players suggests some history of mistrust. I would really love to see that expanded upon in some sort of interesting, original way. Now that they're departing from this part of the lore, they have room to come up with some other unique story for these creatures and their relationship to the world, to Gaia, and therefore the player, because as the player, when you're playing this game, you're introduced to it through Zone 1, which is very Gaia-centered. The lens that you view everything through, your relationship with the world, is all informed based on that initial impression. And so thereby your impressions of future cultures that you meet, like the Ferans, is also informed by that first impression. You see them in the context that you first see the world. You experience them in that way first of all. And so I do believe that whatever happens with the Ferans, in my opinion, it should still stem around their relationship to the natural world. If they did break away from something, then it should be something that went against the course of the natural world. At least that makes the most sense with the dynamic that they currently have in the game today. There's a couple very specific final pieces that I would love to touch on here. First of all, this picture here. Not something that I had clocked for a while now, somehow, but it's definitely this. This creature here, a wraith, and its lantern just depicted all as one instead of separately. I had never fully put that together before, that concept art has very much come true in the game. Something that I've missed up until now. The other thing that I would love to point out that's very interesting is this concept of the Feran spawn. I wonder if this is something that's changed. The truth is, I don't completely know. If we bring in one of them, it depicts one of these creatures here, but its arm has a sort of anti-gravity effect to it, which clearly we don't see on the current model, but it does seem to echo this sort of anti-gravity work that you would find in the Forgotten Temple. These are just particle effects stolen from the Forgotten Temple. So in the Forgotten Temple, there's these anti-gravity effects where things are being held up like this, and it seems like it's the same sort of magic in the concept art that would have been applied to this creature right here. Which is interesting solely for the fact that then it seems like Gaia and Feran are both accessing this same piece of power, which seems to be really integral to the world because it's blue. That sounds stupid, but hear me out, okay? Because portal entrances are blue. that anti-gravity stuff is blue. The magic biome, the Azure Forest, in which you get things to make portals and things like that, is also blue. The materials that you get to make those portals, also blue. All of those blue plants, the mushrooms, the kelp, the flowers, they're all called mana plants. So it's all revolving around magic, and it seems that blue is kind of the default color of representing magic in the world. I would have assumed that Gaia would have the only claim to this. If they ever add something like that into the game, it does bring the implication that Feran also has some sort of sway over that power inherently, or the ability to co-opt or corrupt it, which I think could potentially be more interesting. If they introduce something like that into the game, assuming this is not completely a scrapped idea, because I think it would be very cool to see, it would be amazing to see it through the lens of that power being warped. Maybe now it looks purple colored. I don't know. And maybe it works a little bit differently. Maybe it's a little more unstable because it's being corrupted. There could be a lot of depth there that then doesn't really have to change the way the player interacts with the world, but it does inform them about a lot of other things about the world. The final piece that I would like to touch on, that I hope is not scrapped concept art, is the Garden of Elements. This might not still be the name for it, or maybe not the only name, but this is basically the place that seems somewhat similar to the Forgotten Temple in that it is this floating structure that you can spawn into. However, in this place, Gaia is constrained and asleep. This seems like it would be a large focal point for the curse breaking. And I wonder if this isn't something that will begin to be implemented as the chapters begin to release. This is something that I've begun thinking about a little bit. We're going to get a real Orbis eventually, as we're in the echoes of Orbis right now. So presumably, to get to that real Orbis, we need to break the curse, which seems to be the fact that Gaia is removed from the rest of the world. I don't know how different that will actually look in the real Orbis, but what I do know is that in the concept art, this seems to be a very big piece of the puzzle, because this seems to be the place where her form, her body, is actually being kept. And you can see the corruption that's seeping in through there, and obviously we did get elements of this in a gameplay trailer, so presumably somewhere there is a prototype of some version of this place that exists. Or maybe these are two separate places entirely, but regardless, those elements do exist. Those elements are out there. When the chapters do begin releasing, it'll be interesting to see what concepts they do end up keeping, because I do have a feeling that there's going to be some sort of momentum built up in terms of unlocking a new world. Simon has said a few times now that the whole process that the game has gone through in real life is now part of the narrative structure of the game. And it seems like we're in for a bit of a unique experience, those of us who have been here for early access, because we're going to experience the unlocking of this story that leads us to the real version of the game, if you will. If you think that I've missed anything, then please do let me know. And let me know what you would like to hear about next, because I'm not gonna lie, until we get these chapter updates coming out, we may have covered just about everything that I can think to cover. We've got a few topics that still haven't been picked, like the poor wind people, who people keep not wanting to hear about. But if you have anything else that you would like to explore, do let me know. And I will see you soon. Happy hightailing. Now, enjoy a trailer.
Ah,